tariffs the new interest rates, and are these economic shifts going to rattle the housing market of the United States?
This the place where the info don't stop. Cash talks, yeah, you know it don't stop. Real talk, real keys, real goals on lock. From downtown dreams to the burbs of blocks. Turn a key, feel the beat, that's Cash Talks.
Let's unpack all of this tonight on Cash Talks, where we're talking real estate, mortgage rates, and real talk. With my infamous lender once again joining us tonight out of Glendale, California, Mr. Dave D'Souza. Welcome aboard, Dave.
Cash, good to be with you, my friend. Thank you for having me and looking forward to a good show.
Awesome, man. Me too. Looking forward to it. Let's get into this, man. Let's unpack this tariff talk that we're having right now. It's all over the news, all kinds of things going on. It's been going on, and it's been a big part of our market volatility now today, kind of replacing interest rates, I guess is what the title was about. What's your thoughts about that, Dave?
Yeah, no, it's on the news. It's, I track Wall Street. I track the stock market and the bond market and interest rates, and these little flash pop, the most buzzed word that you're seeing on the news and in these little flashes and all these little things that pop up is the word tariffs.
Tariffs everywhere.
And if you have a minute, I'll just share a little thought with you. There was a 3-judge panel in New York, the Federal Trade Court. They issued a decision or something that they handed down, which the markets gobbled up, and it was essentially that there are a certain number of the tariffs that were levied by the Trump administration on April 2nd, which were this 3-judge panel determined to be, from their perspective, unconstitutional. Now, what we immediately saw, and not only did they say that the tariffs needed to be repealed, but any taxes or tariffs that had been collected at the ports to do with these tariffs needed to actually be refunded to the entities that they were collected from. Now, when this initially came out during the course of the evening yesterday, futures rocketed. I mean, the NASDAQ was up about almost right around 2% plus. The markets reacted very, very favorably to that, both stocks and bonds. Now, this morning, as early as possible, the Trump administration has appealed that decision to another court. And ultimately, Trump has reached out to the Supreme Court asking them if they will hear arguments on this as early as tomorrow, which would then, if they agree, put a pause on what this lower, this federal trade court has issued. So what that comes back to is the point of, is it up, is it down, is it left, is it right? And again, just as sure can be, the markets, both the stocks and the bond market today, lost most of the ground that they gained overnight, because the minute that the Trump administration and the Trump lawyers have appealed this now to the Supreme Court, the concern is, what's the Supreme Court going to do? If there was a strong confidence, as I personally believe there should be based on interpretation of the Constitution, that these tariffs will eventually be repealed, if Wall Street had that confidence, we would not have seen the scale back that we saw today. What that tells me is Wall Street traders, stock, bond traders, they're just not sure where this is going to go. And part of that tells me is they're not quite sure how the Supreme Court is going to interpret this. So I don't know how quickly this is going to unfold, but that's kind of what we've been seeing, at least most recently on the tariff front. Sorry, I took up a little more time than I wanted there, so please go ahead.
No, that's okay, Dave. Yeah, we'd like to hear the information. So, and segueing out of that into what our topic is tonight, talking about left-leaning and right-leaning media sources that are out there, which is plentiful on both sides. And this is not to get political at all, but to just kind of talk about what's real, right? I mean, I think a lot of people know which channels and media outlets are left and which ones are right. Really, at the end of the day, I do.
From my perspective, people could look at it and say, well, prices aren't ideal. And people could look at it and say, well, interest rates aren't ideal. Well, as we said on previous shows and previous podcasts, if you wait for the price to be right, and so are 10 million other people, And
Yeah.
then you're competing with that many more people for somewhat lower of a price, which means by the time you get done competing, how close are you actually going to be to where the prices are now?
Right.
And as far as the interest rate piece goes, if you buy when there's less competition, so you buy the rate, you buy the property, you have the interest rate you have now, you work with that for the time being. And when the market improves or when rates improve, so back to the perspective of the right versus the wrong time. Could there be a time when prices will be better? Could there be a time when rates could be better? Sure. But when prices are better and rates are better, so is the competition. It's more.
Right.
And so the advantages to buying now is, even though the price may not be ideal, even though the rate may not be ideal, you're going to you're more likely to get a property that you want versus having to settle for something that may not necessarily be what you want, because you're going to be competing with several other people. And the minute you get to a point where prices are lower and rates are lower, that means if the demand is higher, that's going to have an ultimate effect on price anyway. And the whole process becomes so much more stressful when you're one of 10 people offering on a house than maybe when you're one of 2 or 3. Cash, maybe you can speak to that.
No, absolutely. You don't want to wait till you get into another frenzy of buyers popping back off off the fence, if you will, and getting back into the market. And then we get into a bidding wars and prices go up, and that's how it goes every single time. Right now, there's a lull in the market. It has slowed. Houses are sitting in the market longer. Days on market have increased. Price reductions have increased. And it's not that home values are coming down. We've seen price reductions, and we've seen a fair amount of price reductions. I want to say it's about 29% is the rate across the nation. I remember just in Santa Clarita looking at 100 price reductions in the last 10 days, actually. So that's what we're experiencing right now in our real estate market. It has slowed down, so this is definitely a good time if you're a buyer. Yes, the rates have trickled down a little bit, Dave. I think you're about 6.75 still right now?
Well, perfect segue, if you don't mind, for me to maybe give a quick 90-second update on the
Sure.
markets from last week, and we're already here at Thursday of this week. So maybe I can give a quick recap of what last week was and then how that's evolved or changed
Perfect.
this week.
Yeah.
And then from there, we can segue into a brief discussion about Donald Trump and Jay Powell and the Federal Reserve and the playback there.
Okay, perfect.
Let me just give you a very quick rundown, if I may. Our par rate, and this is as of Friday of last week, our par rate as of Friday of last week was 6.7% on a standard conforming 30-year fixed. Good news, and you'll see this on next week's update, but through the progression of this week, we're actually down to 6.6 as I'm speaking to you right now. As of close of business today, our par rate is dropped from 6.7 back down to 6.6.
Fantastic.
Which is a 0.1 reduction. So it's basically back to what it was 2 weeks ago. Stocks ended the week last week about 2.5% lower. And this ties directly in to the first part of our conversation with tariffs. Toward the latter part of the week last week, Donald Trump announced that there were going to be new tariffs of a certain amount on the EU. I think it was 50% on the EU. And on top of that, there was going to be an additional tariff to Apple because of the fact that he wanted to try to incentivize them to produce their phones more locally.
Correct.
In the long run. Well, whatever the rights and wrongs and opinions may be there, the end result of it is the interest rates went up 0.1% for that week, and the stocks were dropped 2.5%, which is notable for that week. Now, that was as of Friday last week. As we sit here today, I don't have the exact numbers, but I can tell you for sure that the stock market has gone up from where it closed last week, and interest rates have improved from last week. And that's for a couple of reasons. Over the weekend, last weekend, Donald Trump and the Trump administration came back and said, okay, those tariffs that we put in on Wednesday or Thursday or Friday of last week, we are going to put a pause on those. So that helped both stocks and bonds in the early part of the week. And then what helped a little bit today was yesterday, as we said at the top of the show, the Federal Trade Court in New York, which is not a very it's not a very familiar trade court. It's not a very familiar court, only because it's been an extremely rare thing over the history of time, over the last decades, that this trade court has actually had to get involved in trade policy. But they did, because of what the ruling they passed, temporarily pausing, freezing all of the Trump tariffs that were put on what he called Liberation Day. That had a positive effect on both bonds, which is interest rates and mortgages, and it had a positive effect on stocks today. Now, depending on how that pans out, it remains to be seen how that goes. So that was a quick recap of last week. One last quick little segue I could throw in, and this is relevant. A lot of people talk about, well, the Federal Reserve, Jerome Powell, the chairman of the Federal Reserve. It is supposed to be an apolitical body. It is not supposed to be blue. It's not supposed to be red. It's supposed to be red, white, and blue.
Correct.
And again, depending on what source you look at, there has been a certain amount of, I don't want to say pressure, but a certain amount of encouraging from the executive branch, from Trump administration to Powell and the Federal Reserve to lower interest rates. Now, this is an article that I saw just today, and today Jay Powell met with Donald Trump. And here's the headline of the article. Fed Chair Powell met with Trump at the White House today, Thursday, and told him that rate decisions cannot be political. Now, that's something that everybody knows theoretically. There are some people that feel like, from a practical perspective, it is political, and there's others that say, no, it's not, and it's perfectly straight up. Two little quick key bullet points before I turn it back over to you. The first point, yes, President Donald Trump met Thursday with Fed Chair Jerome Powell amid his inspiring to the central bank to lower interest rates. The release indicated that Powell and his Fed colleagues remain committed to setting monetary policy on careful, quote unquote, careful, objective, and a non-political analysis. Now, choose to believe or not believe that if you will, but what the Fed is saying is our decisions are going to be based on this age-old mandate that they talk about, right? Employment and inflation, and is not political. The decisions they make are not supposed to benefit the left, they're not supposed to benefit the right, or hurt either of the other. That said, let me turn it back over to you and see what thoughts you have on this.
Well, I think it's great that they finally got together and talked. That's real good right there. So it's going to be exciting to see how it turns out here in the short term and the long term. We need rates to come down, and I know Trump has been really screaming and hollering about that, and it looks like maybe we're getting a little bit of progress. I mean, you just had a little improvement yourself, and at least we're south of that 7% number, because I know that number always slows the market down. But we're still slow, even though it has trickled down a little bit down. You said 6.6 now for you. I know yours is a little bit more aggressive and competitive than a lot of lenders out there.
The typical market tends to be about an eighth to a 1/4% higher on rate than where we are.
Yeah, no, I've listened. A lot of times I've looked at the competing rates, and you've always got the best rates going on. So that's always good news. And then couple that with some great service, and it's an unbeatable match. But
thank you.
What I really feel is going on too is besides the rates, and now we got the tariffs, as our producer was saying, that these are our new interest rate volatility.
The tariffs have stolen the spotlight.
Stolen the spotlight, exactly. Well said. That that's put a lot of concern into people. Between the high rates, which have come down, but the tariff talks and the economy. And then when you start looking at certain media sources, whether, again, not to be political, but one leans left, one leans right, and then you've got to find what works best for you, or what kind of resonates with you best for the news that you're absorbing, right? But at the end of the day, though, right, whether you are watching left-leaning or right-leaning, you want to find something that there is no agenda. They're not pushing a political agenda one way or the other, but they're actually talking truthful and points and what's going on in our economy, in our housing market, because you need to know so you can make decisions based on that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And just a quick point, if I may, just specific to what you just said. You have referenced several times in our podcast this notion of consumer confidence. And I will tell you that while consumer confidence is definitely at a low right now, there's a couple of different factors as I see it. Yes, consumers are concerned about tariffs and prices, but another thing that really unsettles people is volatility.
Yes.
So in other words, if interest rates are up and then they're down and then they're up and then they're down, if tariffs are on and then they're off and then they're on and then they're off, that volatility in itself, regardless of the end result of what that volatility causes, just the volatility itself could make people scared, people concerned about spending money. And that's why consumer confidence, from things as large as homes right down to groceries, there's a concern of people spending money, which I think is directly tied to what you said, is consumer confidence.
Right. Yeah. Consumer confidence is down right now. Builder confidence is down as well. Cost of building materials have been going up, and some are blaming that on the tariffs, and that very well could be. Certain things like lumber and metals and different items and copper that are going up, and that's going to affect the overall cost of new construction. So new construction might be getting pinched a little bit here in our market right now. Some of the numbers I saw were somewhere like an added $9,000 to $11,000 per home is what it's going to cost somebody now. So I guess they didn't put in that equation, though, is the cost of the house. I mean, is that your basic $500,000 house across the United States? Or that's not a multi-million-dollar house, obviously.
It all has to be relative, because $9,000 on $1 million house is a lot different than $9,000 on a $400,000.
Right. And to take it a little bit further, your point earlier about consumer confidence and the volatility causing a lot of people to, kind of hold on to their pocketbook a little bit more than they normally would. Do you remember we talked about the interest rates and a lot of people with the golden handcuffs on, right? What that's been titled.
Oh, interest rate prisoners.
Interest rate prisoners, or they're calling it the golden handcuffs, where they're hanging on to that rate. They're not moving. They're not selling their house. Not doing anything with that incredibly historically low interest rate, which I understand. I get it, but they're locked themselves into this house, and some people need to move. They want to move, and there's all a variety of reasons why, but they're not. It's because of the rate. So a lot of them now are talking, or have been for a while, I'm going to wait for the rates to come down. I'm going to wait for, and we're telling them, I know you've been screaming that, I've been screaming it. They're not.
I think we've discussed it on almost every weekly podcast.
I'm sorry, Dave?
I think we've discussed it on almost every single podcast.
Everyone, we're pounding it in. We're pounding it in. Don't wait for those rates to come down like that, because something catastrophic is going to have to happen for it to happen, like COVID, right? Or war. We keep talking about that. And to your point about the volatility causing people, or the consumer confidence to be squandered, right, as a result of the volatility. That's exactly what would happen if you waited around for something catastrophic to happen. The rates drop down to incredible historical lows. Are you really going to be the guy who now breaks out all your money and goes and buys a home because the rate's just so attractive now, right? No, because the consumer confidence is going to be squashed to the ground. You're not going to want to do anything except
I would
money
say
under the mattress.
Coming up on 33 years this July doing this and watching the markets, I'll say this. The rates we saw in the 2s and 3s and even in the 4s, they were all the result of what we've been saying over and over again was a catastrophic event. In this specific case, it was a pandemic. Whatever it is, if it's a pandemic, if it's a war, if it's a famine, if it's a some sort of catastrophic event, if it's a depression, is this what you're waiting for to decide that you want to buy a house? Now, I can say realistically, if this quote unquote tariff drama subsides and we see some sort of stability returning to the markets, where you remove the tariffs as a factor in both prices and consumer confidence. If we back that down, if we're able to dial that down a little bit, I think we could see 30-year fixed rate interest rates drop about 0.5% into the upper 5s and right around the 6% mark. And I would say, not that I advocate waiting for that, because if that happens, guess what? Your competition to buy is also going to be a lot more. But I would say if it's starting to get down to that amount, get together with cash and start looking at the homes. Because if you're waiting for the 5%-ish rate to come around, you might be waiting a lot longer than you think, respectfully.
Right. Absolutely, 100%, Dave. That's spot on.
I mean, even 5.5 to me is quite a stretch right now. I mean, if we were to scrape 6.1, 5.99,
yeah,
I would hope to see the floodgates open and people saying, okay, now it's time to jump.
Oh, I know it. We get to 6 or even really close to 6, it's going to start getting real busy.
And I
And
tell you what's going to happen at that point. All the people that waited are going to say, okay, great. I got the house that I want. It's at the price that I want. My interest rate's pretty close, much closer than where I want it to be.
right,
Problem is now there's 32 people that want the same house.
right. I will tell you right now, if you're a buyer out there and you're listening to us, listen, this is the time to strike if you're a buyer. If you're a seller, you're going to have buyers coming at you. They see your house has been on the market for a while. And this is a time to get a little more aggressive as a buyer. Go ahead and let's negotiate. Let's put some of these deals together. You're going to make up on the purchase right now, regardless of whatever the interest rate is. You're going to make that up on the purchase right now, today, and maybe for a short term. But listen, the Fed's talking with Trump. Everything's Bessent is working on the 10-year Treasury, doing everything he can to get an angle in that direction with getting these rates down, because everyone in the administration wants to see the rates come down because it just stimulates everything. It stimulates the housing market, the economy. Everybody gets happy and cushy and confident, right? And the volatility slows down. We get a little bit of, normalcy put back into our market. And boy, it's going to just go off. I'm looking forward to it. It's coming. I know it's coming. I feel it in my bones. And sellers, right? Sorry?
Go ahead.
I was saying sellers, here's a great story. So I have a listing that recently we had to do a price reduction. There's been a lot of price reductions, right? So you've got to be smart about the price reductions and look at it like this. And my seller said it, I didn't even have to say it. And the guy's very smart. He said, listen, let's lower the price. He told me, let's lower the price. I'm like, yeah, I agree. We need to lower the price. We got to get a little more attractive looking at price right now, because this is a very important price in a home right now is huge. And you have to be honest with yourself. The agent's got to be honest too. And you guys have got to work on this as a team to get the best price for you. But when the house is sitting on the market, you're not getting any activity. There's no phone calls. There's no one looking at the property. You're overpriced for this market. Now, if you want to wait for another market, that's a different story. But for this market in the foreseeable near future, this is your market. You're going to need to adjust the price, providing the marketing is done correctly. So take a look at that first. Make sure you've got a real solid listing agent that knows what they're doing, marketing the property correctly, priced it in the ballpark. And if you've done all that and you got someone on the phone, hustling, networking, doing all the things they could do, making sure they could do everything they can to get buyers over to look at your property. If it's not happening, you've got a pricing problem. Simple as that. There's no mystery here. That's what it is. So take a good, strong look at all those things. But let me get back to my point with my seller. He said, listen, he's going to buy another property. Okay. He said, what I lose on the price reduction here, I'm going to make up on the purchase because they're lowering the price on that one too. And he's
and I'll give you an interesting little segue just to support what you're saying. This is a little extreme, but it illustrates the point. But this is certainly a little excessive compared to most situations. But right here in Glendale is very desirable.
Yes.
A client of mine this week contacted me about a house that he found, and he wanted to make an offer on the house. And it's a single-family house in Glendale. Was originally listed 18 months ago for $1.7 million. It is on the market right now for $1.2 million. They just had a price reduction, and it's been on the market for 18 months.
18 what?
18 months.
18 months. Ouch.
And he's thinking about making an offer somewhere closer to $1 million, $1.1 million, maybe $1.05 million, somewhere in that ballpark. I don't know exactly what the numbers are. His realtor will ultimately determine that. But that's just to give you an idea. That's an extreme case, but it's not that far off of what a lot of sellers are going to be doing if they wait around a lot longer.
Right.
There needs to be a little bit more of a reality check on sellers' part about what they sell their house for. And there needs to be buyers a little bit more flexibility so that we end up with a situation where even if the price isn't right and the interest rate isn't right, I'll use a little visual. You've got sellers over here, you've got buyers over here, and there's a big gap in between. And we need to narrow that gap so that they get a little closer to each other. And then we'll have a little bit more of a healthy, balanced market.
100%. Exactly. That's right. So that's what sellers have got to look at. They've got to look at, and again, it's all relative to what you're doing, so there's not a one size fits all answer for the real estate transactions out there right now. It just depends, and it's relative to what works for you. Like my seller that's going to be buying another property. He knows he takes a little bit of a haircut on this one, but he's going to give the haircut on the purchase, right? And so it all works. It's a wash. It all works out at the end of the day. So, but if maybe you're not that motivated to move or sell your house. Maybe it's like, I just want to see what sticks. Well, then these people will be taking their home off the market. You're going to see the expires and the cancel and withdrawing listings start to pick up. and they are a little bit already, but they're going to start picking up more because houses are sitting there longer. And if they're not doing a price adjustment, and again, if everything is done correctly with the marketing and everything, they got the right agent on the job, then they got to look at the price. And if they don't want to look at the price, they need to take it back off the market and make a new plan. Maybe they want to look at this later.
Listening to what you're saying now, the word serious/committed comes to mind. If you're a serious committed seller, you're going to sell in this market. If you're a serious committed buyer, you're going to buy in this market. If you're not a serious seller, if you're not committed, if you're not a serious buyer and you're not committed,
right,
you're going to end up just drifting through this market until either the inventory increases, or the prices may drop and interest rates may drop, but the competition is also going to drop. And what's going to happen is, when that happens, a lot of people who are not committed and not serious, a whole lot of those people will become serious and committed, both sellers and buyers, and then the competition will go up.
Right, gotcha. So I was talking a bit earlier about.
I wanted to just throw those two words in: serious and committed.
No, absolutely, you're on. And serious, committed, and motivated. What is the motivation? And a good agent has got to find that out from the buyer and the seller. What is the motivation? More so the sellers, really. Are you motivated to really sell? What's happening? We need to know on a scale of 1 to 10. Where are you at with all these things?
Can you part with that 2.99% interest rate you have?
Exactly. They take off the golden handcuffs, right? Let's go ahead. Let's move forward and get to your new location, your new journey, right? But to your point earlier, we were talking about new construction prices that they're getting hit a little bit because of the cost of new builds.
Sure, materials.
Sorry?
Materials.
Yeah.
I mean, that's one advantage that existing homes have, is they're not building a new home, so the price is what it is. Right. New homes, there's a very direct factor, that's the cost to build a house.
Right. And you got tariffs on things like lumber, steel, and appliances.
Yep.
Disproportionately hit the new builds, okay? Where those material costs are baked into the price. So the price gap between brand new homes and comparable older homes may now widen a little bit. So one thing new home construction, though, will have is they can incentivize you a whole lot more, with offering lower interest rates, credits, buy down rates, all kinds of fun things that they have.
What they do is just to elaborate a little bit on what you said, they'll take a certain amount of the price of it. It's all built into the price. So they'll say, well, we'll sell you this house at this price, but we'll give you $25,000 or $30,000 towards buying your interest rate down. Well, they're not doing that out of the goodness of their heart.
Right.
They're doing this because that $25,000 to $30,000 they're giving you is really built into the price. So your response should be, well, how about you sell me the house for $25,000 or $30,000 less, and I'll go get my own loan.
Right. Yeah, you're spot on, 100%.
I mean, God bless the builders. They're not necessarily the most generous, I want to do good on the planet kind of people. I mean, they're for-profit organizations.
Right.
And anytime it looks like they're giving you something for free, there's going to be some sort of a rub somewhere in there.
Ain't nothing free. Ain't nothing free in this life, man.
Yep.
But I'll tell you, with the builders out there right now, they have builder confidence. Oh God, I can't say it now, but the builder confidence level, anyways, that has gone down quite a bit too. And
the NAHB, National Association of Home Builders survey,
that's one of them. Yeah,
is showing that the builder NAHB, confidence is definitely down.
Definitely down. As a combination of costs, slower sales, higher rates, and all those things that are played in, because they've been having to incentivize people as well as paying higher costs for the building materials as well. So that has caused them to slow down. So new permits have definitely slowed down quite a bit. There's still a lot in queue already that were already in place a while ago, which are still on hold, if you will. But as far as new permits, right now, that's down quite a bit. Actually.
Well, and if you think about it from a builder's perspective, it's just like, BMW or Chevrolet or Ford. The less, let's say there's no quality compromise. Mm-hmm. The less they can build something for, the greater their profit margin.
Right.
If the cost to produce a home is going up substantially, that means either they have to raise their prices or they have to lower their profit margins, or both.
Right. And
that's an unsettling thought for any person. I mean, the part that used to be their ace in the hole, I can build a house at less expensive. I'm building 20, 30, 40 houses. I can build it less.
Yeah. Yes.
If that's sort of being compromised now with a lot of these, tariffs and cost to build a house.
Right.
Well, it doesn't leave much left.
Right. So what type of market are we in? I get asked that question quite a bit. Are we in a seller's market, a buyer's market, a neutral market? Where are we? And the best answer to that for me today is, kind of throwing a blanket on it for nationally in the different states that I work in between Idaho, Nevada, and California, is that we're more neutral really to kind of starting to slip into a buyer's market a little bit. And that again is a result of more inventory and less demand, because of the higher rates and the volatility and the consumer confidence being shot down right now. So that is opening up a slot for buyers right now. This is a great time to make that move. And you can negotiate right now.
Well, can I ask you a question on that?
Yeah.
With current levels of inventory and understanding it may be different between the three different places where you do business, how would you compare current levels of inventory to what is statistically considered normal in all three of those areas?
We haven't hit. We're getting pretty close to that normal inventory levels.
So we're
just
still
a little
below
bit under, but the inventory has doubled pretty much in a lot of markets from just January of this year. So.
But would you say that the inventory is at, above, or below what you would consider normal levels in these markets?
I would say just a little bit below or getting very close to normal levels.
Okay. So it's not quite to normal levels, but it's getting there.
Right. But when we have a lot of demand, the inventory is not increasing. They're going pending a lot faster, right? And the ratio is definitely, our absorption ratio is definitely there. Right now, it's dropped down to probably a good 30%, where it was a 46% of active listings, where a percentage of those were actually pending in escrow already under contract. So that has definitely slowed down.
So there was a time where like almost 1 out of every 2 active listings was in escrow.
Yeah. Homes weren't on the market very long. They were moving, And
so now it's down to more like 1 out of every 3.
Right. But here's the kicker. Home values really are holding ground. They're not really coming down. And people are seeing all the price reductions and all these kind of things. And they're hearing a lot of things in the media. But the home values are really holding steady. The acceleration of appreciation, that has slowed down. So when they hear that, that's a buzzword for, the market's crashing. It's going, no. It was appreciating at 3, 4, 5%. Now maybe it's decelerated. Maybe it's
right. In other words, not growing as fast doesn't mean it's crashing.
Exactly right. And another thing to add to that is just because you're seeing price reductions out there does not mean the home values are coming down. Why is that? That's because the sellers, owners of the homes, and the listing agents could decide to put whatever listing price they want on the property. Some of them are still in this thought process that let's price it high so we can work our way down. Well, and then when they price it high, they're not getting offers. They're not getting anybody looking at their house because they see that it's overpriced.
And now they're getting a stigma attached to the property.
Right. And some people just get too excited because the market was going real well. It was a great seller's market. And then it takes a couple months for them to realize, hey, the market's changed. Unless you've got a really good agent that is paying attention to those things and can share that information with you. Like, hey,
or it's taking a little while to realize that by listing it high, they shot themselves in the foot.
Shot themselves right in the foot. Yeah.
Sorry, that doesn't sound very graceful, but you know what I'm saying.
And if you wait too long, as I learned back in the 2008-9 crash, that if you wait too long, you're just going to follow the market down and you're just going to keep following it down and it's going to become horrible.
I think the tactic of listing on the higher side might have worked when inventory was at super low levels. Mm-hmm. There was a point where, right after the COVID boom, interest rates were high and inventory was at exceptionally low levels.
Right.
Well, that's not there anymore. So I think a lot of sellers need to take a step back. And again, if they're serious or committed, they need to take a step back and realize that the market we're in right now is not the low inventory market we were in. Right. And I think a combination of sellers becoming more realistic on what they can sell their home for, combined with buyers being a little bit more realistic about what they may pay and what interest rate they may get.
Right.
That is going to be the sweet sauce for a healthier, more robust, more balanced real estate market.
Right. And there's other things too that can be employed, like creative financing. And even if you don't have to get very creative with your financing, you still need to know all the vehicles that are available for you that you can employ. And like talking to a good lender like yourself, that, hey, some people think I have to put 20% down. No, heck no. I have to put 10% down. No, not even. I could put 5. No, you can.
Can I add you something?
Down. Yeah.
We have a program right now in LA County, as an example, because the loan limits in LA are a little bit higher than many places.
Yeah.
I could do on a single family property, condo or townhome or house, I can go up to 1.25 million with, you ready for this? Zero down,
Zero down,
no income
folks.
limits, and no first time home buyer requirement. On
Right.
a duplex, can go up to 1.6 million.
On a
Zero money down.
duplex. On a duplex, 1.6
No
million.
first time
Zero
home
down.
buyer requirement. So if you've owned a home before and you've sold within the last 3 years, or
Right.
you're selling your house to buy this, no issue.
Right.
Or if you're going to rent out the home that you're living in now and then buy this as a residence,
Yeah.
0% down, no
Right.
down payment, up to 1.6 million on a duplex.
Yeah.
And up to 1.25 million on a single family dwelling. No
Right.
first time home buyer requirement, and no income limits.
Right.
No
Right.
income limits.
And what people need to
Typically, a lot of these
understand, they're
programs have income caps, not this one. Sorry, go
right.
ahead.
And a little bit of a hack that people could do is that on with buying a duplex or a fourplex or whatever the case might be, is that you could use the income from those other rentals. Like if you're going to live in one of the units, you could use the income of the other rentals, correct? That could
Absolutely. You
help you
buy
get
a
that loan.
duplex and you've got the mortgage and whatever the mortgage and taxes and insurance are. You're only required to live in one of the units. And let's say it's a larger and a smaller unit. You decide you want to live in the smaller unit, rent out the
Mhm.
larger unit.
Mhm.
That rent is directly offsetting your mortgage.
Right. Right. And resale sellers too, homes that were not brand new, they could look at employing things too, like assumable loans. If their loan is assumable and they could work out the numbers, you just got to talk to the lender again and see if that's an option that you could provide people to enhance your property value with that, because people are trying to get away from the 6.5% rates, but they see that they could assume a 4 or a 3% interest rate. That might be something worth looking at. You might even
And that's something that the agent, like you as the agent, which I know you do, when you go to list somebody's house, if they have a really good interest rate on it, the first thing you're going to do is call their servicer with them and say, hey, is this an assumable loan? Under what circumstances could a new buyer qualify for and assume this 2, 3, 4% interest rate,
right.
which is going to make the home a lot more attractive than another home that may be exactly the same home out there at 6.5%.
Exactly, 100%. So that's why you got to think outside of the box. You got to do things a little differently, be creative, and these things all help all day long, 100%. So, but anyways, so Dave, see you later. So that's what's happening with our market, and we have a lot that we could talk about here. We can go into other things. We've talked about the handcuffs. We've talked about the home values holding, our bottom line for buyers.
Well, we also want to save a little for next time so our people come back.
We do. We want you to come back, and we want you to bring questions and let us know. And feel free to email me or to comment below. And also, please take a moment to go ahead and subscribe to the channel so we can make sure we keep good content coming your direction and keep you updated on what's going on in the market in real time, right?
And just to remind you of our perspective, Cash and I are both, we've been doing this a long time and we're here for the long run. So whether you're buying next week or next month or 2 months from now or 3 months from now or 6 months or a year from now, we're much more interested in building a resource-based relationship with you. So if you have questions about real estate, if you have questions about real estate trends, if you have questions about real estate markets or real estate financing stuff, please reach out to Cash. And our goal here is to really build a relationship with you by being a resource.
Absolutely, Dave. I couldn't have said it any better. So remember, if you want more cash in your life, just go ahead and subscribe.
Thank you, Cash.
Thank you, Dave.